afternoon, everyone. I am so excited today. We have Shannon Wilburn and Tracy Panase from Just Between Friends with us today on the Women's Franchise Committee podcast, Her Success. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thanks for
having us.
having us.
Absolutely. We are very, very excited. The Women's Franchise Committee is very excited to have you participate in this podcast. We are doing a special version of Her Success, the stories of female franchise leaders, where we highlight women in franchising who are changing the future of the franchising sector. And in this version of our podcast, we have two founders, an exiting founder and an incoming founder of Just Between Friends, which was the featured case study in this year's annual leadership conference at the IFA annual convention in Phoenix. So thank you both for offering and agreeing to become a part of the annual leadership conference. It's one of my favorite parts of the annual convention. And what I'd like to do is have each of you just tell us a little bit about yourselves, a quick bio, and we'll start with you, Shannon.
Awesome. And thank you for thank you for having us at the annual leadership conference in February in Phoenix. And thank you for giving us a chance to tell our story again. It's really fun. So I'm a co-founder of Just Between Friends franchise system. Started the business in my living room with my co-founder, Devin Tackett, in 1997. We franchised in 2003. I didn't know what I was doing, and you'll probably get to hear a little bit about that. The initial concept was going really well, and I look back and I'm like, wow, I don't even know if we should have franchised, but you're gonna hear a lot of the history of Just Between Friends, hopefully today, as we talk about the company and where we are today. So that was 2003. We started franchising. 2018, I started another business. I call it my hobby business. It has nothing to do with franchising. It's called Coal Creek Farm Jinx. It's a photography venue. We live on 15 acres in Oklahoma, and photographers use it for whatever they need for families, for maternity, that type of thing, maternity and engagement sessions, that type of stuff. And then Tracy and I had our transaction in December of 22. And then I started an executive coaching business for founders and for entrepreneurs who want to scale and grow their business. I like to work with service-based businesses. I work with franchisors. I have several franchisor clients. But yeah, it's executive coaching, and I'm enjoying it.
And you are. We have chatted about it, so I'm excited to see it continue to grow. Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah.
Tracy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. And I would echo what Shannon said. Thanks so much for having us. It's fun to tell this story. My name is Tracy Panase, and I was one of Shannon's franchisees. And so I joined the Just Between Friends brand in 2008. At that time, it was my second venture into franchising. My husband and I were owners of another brand called Cookies by Design, which we acquired when I was expecting my second child, who is now 24. So we've been involved in franchising for 2.5 decades. And Just Between Friends kind of fit the same model as Cookies by Design because it was seasonally based. And so it seemed like a good opportunity to complement both of those brands. So we continued to own our cookie franchise, and I purchased Just Between Friends and had a lot of success as a multi-unit franchise owner for a period of 17 years. So I was a multi-unit franchise owner, and acquired one, acquired two, and just really was able to see the power of our brand and how other families were able to say yes to things that their kids needed and wanted. And so it was just a really fun journey for me. But I knew it was not something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so it was really, I reached a point in around like 2021 where it was like, what's next for me? And that's when Shannon and I started our conversations about the future of the brand. And as Shannon said, that she gave the punchline that we came to an agreement in December of 2022. And so I acquired the brand. So it's franchisee, and now I'm the franchisor for Just Between Friends. So I'm at the beginning of my franchisor journey and the end of my franchisee journey, but being a franchisee is probably like what will always have my heart. It's something that I loved being a franchisee, whether it was with Cookies by Design or Just Between Friends. And so I think I've brought that to my role now, is just having the heart of a franchisee.
And will you tell Tracy, I know I'm not the interviewer, Dawn, but will you tell people what Just Between Friends is? Because I forgot to do that.
Yeah. So Just Between Friends is, we're a marketplace for families who can come together to sell items that their children have outgrown or outloved, so that another family can buy those same items for 50 to 90% less than retail. So they're very large in-person events that take place 2 or 3 times a year at over 150 locations throughout the country.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Tracy, both of you, and a little bit of backstory on the brand. So one of the questions that I had for both of you is, when we approach the case study, every year the Women's Franchise Committee decides that there's a brand, there's a compelling story that they want to present in the annual leadership conference. And for those who are listening to this podcast who have never participated in the annual leadership conference, the Women's Franchise Committee produces this event. It is just a half of a day, a little more than half a day, the first day or even the day before convention actually starts. And there is a case study, and nobody knows what the case study, they don't know the brand who is being presented. And so the Women's Franchise Committee decides, this year the theme was empowerment. And so they find a brand and they cultivate this story around some problem, some situation, some opportunity that a brand had in their history. And they are willing to come to convention and share just enough information with the participants in the annual leadership conference to go through a series of really executive level questions. How do we take the brand from where we are to where we want to go, or whatever those goals are? And so I think I think Tracy, you actually answered the question that I had, is typically if a founder is looking to, or a leadership team is looking to sell a brand, the last people you tell are the franchisees, or at least every brand I have been a part of. If there's been an acquisition or a sale, everybody who is in the room is sworn to secrecy. So why don't, Tracy, you tell a little bit about how you decided to approach Shannon and as a franchisee and say, I'm looking to do something else, and then Shannon offering to sell the company. So tell the story.
Yes. So let me just clarify that the company was not like advertised for sale. So it was not something
where we did not go to market.
No, we did not go to market. But it was just something that was in my head for a while. And as I started to continue to have success within my territories, it was like, what's next for me? And so my dad used to always tell me, when you become the strongest person in your gym, it's time to find a new gym. And so I had really kind of outpaced my gym, but I didn't want to leave. And so, as I said at the beginning, I really just aspire to the values of Just Between Friends. We are in a unique position to be able to help families all across the country to be able to buy things for their kids they might not otherwise afford. So we're very mission-based, and that meant a lot to me. And so I started thinking about, well, what's next for me? And so at that same time, we had just gone through a pandemic. So a lot was happening in our world and in our businesses. And so there were some changes happening internally within Just Between Friends. We had started to implement the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS. And so with EOS, it's a little bit more structured than what we had in the past. So instead of having just roles, we now had departments, and there was more a cadence for communication and things. And so people were being appointed to these roles. And my husband and I were on a vacation, and we were in Turks and Caicos, and this was post-pandemic, and there was a special meeting for all franchisees, and some of these changes were being announced. And after the meeting, I turned
those special meetings.
Yeah, special meeting, which is never good, but this was just like, okay, what's going on? And so Shannon announced that there were some new folks that were being appointed to executive roles within the company. And so I turned to my husband and I said, why wasn't I considered for any of those roles? And he just looked at me and he said, Tracy, did you raise your hand? And I said, no. And I just thought, like, well, I'm the top franchisee. Wouldn't someone know that, that I wanted to do more? He's like, probably everyone thinks you're really happy being the top franchisee. And so that was a big dose of reality for me, is like, if you want something, you need to put yourself out there. And so shortly thereafter, that was in May, in June, I mustered up the courage to just have a conversation with Shannon. And we had a good relationship from the always, I think, we were open lines of communication. And because of my role within the company as the top producer, we met on a regular basis. And so during one of those regularly scheduled meetings, I just said, hey, if you're ever interested in selling the company, I'd be interested in talking to you about it. Not knowing that this is highly unusual and that this doesn't typically happen this way. I just assumed that this was the next right step for me. And I felt like I would be able to lead the brand well. And so Shannon, to her credit, was open to that conversation. I mean, I think she could have easily said, like, oh, that's so cute, or, like, thank you, but no, thank you. And so as I said at the beginning, we started a dialogue that lasted about 2 years. And finally we're able to come to an agreement with what that succession plan would look like. And that's really how it happened, is just having the courage to raise your hand and just say it out loud. Like, this is what I'm thinking, would there be any mutual interest?
Wow. Okay. So that is not at all what I expected. Shannon, what did you think when that outreach came to you, when she said, I want to buy your company?
Well, and I'm going to this is probably the more vulnerable side I'm about to share, that we did not share at the annual leadership conference. So for those that attended the annual leadership conference, I think what was told was that there was a life event happened. I didn't even read the case study sheets that were handed out at the tables, but so something that happened in my life during COVID, my husband, he had pre-existing conditions, and in October of 2020, he got COVID, and we knew it would not be good. Dawn, I don't even know if you know this, but he ended up going to the hospital and was intubated twice and flatlined once. And I will tell you, he's a walking, talking, living, breathing miracle, but it was very touch and go for, weeks. And I was thankful we had become an EOS company, a traction company, because at that point we had, we hadn't started that yet. We were moving towards doing that. And so I had elevated some people into those positions in 2019. And so there were people in executive level positions that when I had to step away for, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, the company was still being led by very capable people with high capacity. So fast forward, he comes home in 2021, the beginning of 2021. He actually came home in December of 2020. 2021, we decided to go through EOS and formalize that. And so what Tracy's talking about is I elevated someone to a presidential position who had been in another executive level position, and was very happy to do that, and excited that I was going to have, we were going to have the visionary integrator role, and that was working really well. And it's correct that I did not consider Tracy because I absolutely had no idea there was interest. But I will tell you, I had a mentor tell me a long time ago that when you're thinking about selling your company, it would be a good idea to have 3 kind of possible buyers in mind, like someone who you would want to leave a legacy to, or you would want to, who shares the core values, shares the culture, that would take the company and, continue to lead something so that it doesn't die. And so I had this in my brain. They said, you always need to be ready to sell your business in 5 years, and you always need to have someone in your back pocket. So I had 3 people in my back pocket of, one was a platform company, and then 2 other people. And Tracy was one of those people that was in my back pocket, although I had never, I don't think I had said this to anyone, but it was always in the back of I probably had shared it with my husband. But Tracy was one of those people because of her high capacity, and she's being super humble. She was the top franchisee, but like our AUV, she was doing 4 and 5 times our AUV, and had 4 locations at one point, was leading the FAC at one point, was on the conference planning committee at a couple of times, spoke on the general session stage at conference. And so she and another franchisee had started like a little coaching. I shouldn't say little, because it had a lot of our top performers. They had started that. And so there was already influence. There was already leadership, and something else that Tracy didn't say. This is why I like to brag on her, because I'm honestly, I'm super proud that she's sitting in the position she's in right now, but it wasn't by accident, and I didn't settle by any stretch. It was strategic for the brand that is now sitting in this seat, because she was well positioned for it. She started having a coach. Like, Tracy, when did you start working with a coach?
In 2017.
So 2017. So 4 or 4.5 years of her before she had this conversation, she had been being coached on a monthly basis by people who could give her lead. And I had seen it from the franchisor side. I could see that her leadership was leveling up. It's because she was investing in herself, and it was showing in the numbers in her franchises. It was showing in the influence in the brand. And it was, so all of this stuff happening when that conversation happened. So I'm watching her lead. She's in my back pocket. My husband has just gone through an event where I almost lost him. So we've just done EOS. I'm thinking about the future. So honestly, I feel like the Lord totally had a hand in the conversation happening in, was it August? Anyway, doesn't matter. 2021, summer of 2021. She says, if you're ever interested in selling your brand. And I'm like, okay, well, a competitor has already approached me. Private equity, of course, has been approaching us. Just that's in franchising with that model. That's how it went. So when she approached me, it was like, wow, she's interested. Okay. All right. I don't really think I'm ready to sell my brand. And I'm 100% sure I said that. I don't think I'm ready to sell the brand. But let's have a conversation and let's see where it goes. And so that was kind of how that happened. I gave you way too much information, but
that was a fabulous answer. And so I think that actually ties back to a few questions that I had for Tracy to share with the listeners. So Tracy, one, you raised your hand. So you took that advice, right? You said, how come I wasn't? That's something that I think the Women's Franchise Committee, we definitely recommend when we're mentoring and we're coaching people and we're giving them tips on leadership. It's raise your hand. If you have bandwidth or you are interested, don't sit on the sidelines and then be upset that you weren't chosen to become a part of something, whether it's in your brand or within the IFA or in life anywhere. So that is one huge, coming back to that, you did raise your hand. You hired a coach as a franchisee. Can you talk a little bit about what made you decide to do that? And I'm going to go even further back to, a couple of the other steps in your franchise journey too, because I think that will help us understand a little bit better.
Yes. So 2017, when I hired the coach, the goal was to be able to scale my business. And so at that time, I had 4 territories and all of them were doing well, but we needed to operationalize things. And so it was the processes, the things that I'm not good at. My background's in marketing. So I enjoy, casting my net as wide as possible, getting as many people to come to our events as possible. But as far as the back end stuff about process, procedures, standards, all of those things, I knew that at some point when I wanted to sell my own businesses, those things would be important. That although we're a part of a franchise and we have standards and we have operations manual and all those things, the scale at which we were operating our businesses was high. And so just being able to document all of those things. And so I really wanted guidance in that aspect of my business. And I also wanted to figure out what was next for me personally as the leader. And so having that coach and working outside of franchising. So originally my coach, and now I have different coaches for different needs, but was someone who in a mastermind group, we might have a plumber and an interior designer, all different industries represented, which is very helpful because they're able to look at your business with very clear eyes and just be able to say, well, did you think about that? And so to somebody who maybe in the consignment space, that's like unheard of, but to someone else, that's, why not? And so some of the best ideas that I had came from that group. And so that was originally why I invested in a coach, was primarily to learn how to scale my business, learn what was next for me as the leader, and be able to operationalize excellence, really. And so we've taken all of those elements and incorporated that into our vision for the company. As I've taken over the Franchise Support Center, is like that is our mission, is how do we operationalize excellence, because our goal is to be a household name. And so it's a very lofty goal, but I'm confident that if we follow the model, we can do those things.
Okay. So that begs me to ask the question. So household name, I know just between friends, because of franchising, because of the IFA, and not just because of the annual leadership conference. So your brand name was on my radar. How many franchisees do you have now? And how big do you think it can get?
So to answer your question, for now, we have 150 locations. We're in 33 states. So we have a lot of white space. We have a lot, and we solve a problem that never goes away. Kids are always going to be growing. Parents are always going to be looking for a cost-effective way to clothe and entertain their children. So our goal is really, we've got within EOS, we've got a 1-year goal, 3-year picture, and 10-year vision. So our 10-year is around, I think it's like 350 units. But our goal for this year is 171. And so we feel like we're poised for growth. The economy is very conducive to a brand like Just Between Friends. As things start to get more expensive, people are much more cognizant of where their dollars are being spent. And in addition to that, I think millennials are a little bit more mindful of the sustainability factor. And so we kind of are able to tick a lot of boxes for consumers, because not only are they able to save money, they're also able to save the planet. So I think there's tremendous opportunity for growth. So the short answer to your question is we can double our size and still not reach every parent in the US.
Okay. Shannon, I just have to ask you the question. Do you agree with that goal? I know that you're
Oh my gosh,
now
yes.
a mentor for the brand and the original founder, but brand ambassador.
Yeah, so I think Tracy, both of us, we tend to be visionary in nature. And I thought I was visionary. And then when Tracy comes in and says, household name, I'm like, yes. Totally. I mean that seems very exciting. It seems very fun, and not just for Tracy and not just for Shannon, but for our franchisees and for the families that participate in these events around the nation. Right now we're only growing domestically. And like last year, did we have 500,000 shoppers? We had over 500,000 shoppers. And then we had over 100,000 sellers. So that is, think about the largest stadium. Like, what did I tell you, Tracy? What stadium?
I think you used Beaver Stadium in Penn State.
Yes, yes.
I'm in Pennsylvania, so everything revolves around Penn State.
Yeah, so that holds 100,000 people. That's how many families got to sell at a Just Between Friends event in 2023. So if you think about that, like doubling that, like that's already so many, and it affects their families in just this really fun way. And having 1 million shoppers, and not only are we going to grow the footprint, we're also, each location is also going to grow. Like there's lots of it's, I don't know, it makes me really excited, and it's fun to talk about, and it's fun to watch someone else take the lead. And it feels really fun to have started something that now my children are shopping. My daughter lives in Boston. She shops at the New Hampshire location because we don't have a location in Boston right now. And my daughter-in-law lives about 90 minutes west of me in the Edmond, Oklahoma City area, and she shops at the Oklahoma City event. And so this is a legacy brand that has new life in it, and it's poised for great things.
Wow. That sounds amazing. And I like the idea of international. I think that you both have hit on that. Just my marketing opinion, there is a lot of interest in consignment and in reusing and reselling very, hardly worn, hardly used toys.
We say
so
gently,
I think
gently worn.
Gently worn.
Gently worn.
Exactly. And I'm from a family of 4 children. I have aunts who are not that much older than me, so things were still very trendy when I had them as a child. So we had our own little thing going. So Tracy, I'm going to turn back to you. If you went back and thought of your role as a franchisee 20 years ago, and maybe speaking to somebody who is currently a franchisee, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years in their career, would you give them advice that today you think could help them, but also 5 years from now?
Absolutely. I think the best piece of advice that I ever received as a franchisee was to model successful behavior, right? Which sounds so simple, right? Why would you want to model unsuccessful behavior? But when we bought our first cookie store, my husband and I had no experience in owning a retail bakery. He was an engineer. My background was in marketing. And so we asked every person that we met, who is doing this well? And so everybody said, you need to go to Chicago, Allen. This gentleman's name was Allen. And so we're like, okay, we'll go. And so we went and we spent a week in Chicago, and we just watched everything that they were doing and tried to just take it all in and be good students of what did success look like. And so the same thing held true when I bought my first Just Between Friends, had never consigned anything. There were no franchise locations in the state of Pennsylvania. I had a business partner. She didn't have any of that experience either. So I didn't use StrengthFinder for that, but together we knew what we didn't know. And so asked the same question, who's having the most success in this space? And so everybody said, Kathy. And we're like, okay, where's Kathy? And so Shannon alluded to Oklahoma City. Kathy's in Oklahoma City, one of our original founding members, a charter member for the brand. And so we went and we spent a week with Kathy. And so we learned everything that Kathy was doing. And to this day, although I don't own my franchise locations any longer, the principles and the processes that are in place were from Kathy. And so we really learned how to do things the right way. And so I would say to anybody who's getting involved in franchising is that you have to be open to learning from others and humble enough to realize that that people have had success and you would be smart to follow it. And so sometimes that's a difficult thing because folks who get into franchising are entrepreneurial in nature, and there's often a bias like, I know how to do this, or, I'm smarter than everyone else. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in just listening more than you talk and being able to observe what other people are doing and why they're having success and taking what serves you in your local community. And so that was really the mantra of our conference this year, was success is possible for everyone. And so you've got to believe that success is possible, because there are others within your system, whether it's consignment or fast food or whatever it may be, people are having success. And so just figuring out what is that secret sauce is what I think will have the greatest benefit for franchisees.
And one thing that Tracy has done that I love, that I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of this? She has come up with something called the 5 fundamentals. And do you want to talk a little bit about that, Tracy?
Sure. So to that same point of, when I look at our COO, also a very successful franchisee, she and I actually went to training together in 2008, and now we're leading the company. So that's been a really fun part of this whole story as well. But we started to think about, like, what are these fundamental things that have enabled us to have success, not once, but for a sustainable period of time. And so we outline them into these 5 principles, which we call the 5 fundamentals. And so there are things related to scaling your business, customer service, also rinse and refine, which is more like making continuous improvement to your business. And so together we teach this course, a 5-week course on the 5 fundamentals, which is a virtual as well as in-person apprenticeship. So not only are we talking about it, but because our business is event-based, we're taking franchisees, small groups, it's a cohort of about 12, to a sale to show them this is what winning looks like. When we talk about families first, this is what we mean. It's having a warm and friendly face at the door. It's somebody helping them out to their car with their big bags of stuff, giving people snacks in line, or, those are the types of principles that we're talking about. So the 5 fundamentals is something that we introduced last year. This year, we've got 2 classes of the 5 fundamentals. And our goal is that we're taking that kind of middle section of our system, those that haven't quite had the success that we know they're capable of, and showing them that this is how you do this. These are the things they're so simple. But sometimes the simplest things to do are the simplest things not to do. And so we're trying to shine a light on what that looks like in the context of our business.
Excellent. So it's the principles of franchising all combined in a nutshell right there. It's not reinventing the wheel, right? It's following the process. And then I love the fact that you're focusing on your existing franchisees. And you could teach a master class on that, I think, from hearing you talk about this.
Yeah, she and Allison together. Allison is our number 2. She number 2 right now, number 2 franchisee. In Tacoma, Washington, as the COO, like she said. And the way Allison's mind works is we call her the great simplifier.
Yes.
Because she can take something complex and just make it very systematic and simple to understand. And the 2 of them together in the last 15 months have refined a lot of stuff, created, made some stuff that we had started better and created new things, which I would expect them to do. And like, I'm amazed and so proud. Like, I want to tell everybody, like, look how they're doing it, because it's helping our brand grow. I mean, the brand grew in 2023. Well, yeah, in 2022, right before the transaction happened, we grew 20%. And last year we grew by 20% too. Isn't that correct, Tracy?
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's like crazy for a legacy brand to
Continue
still
to grow.
Yeah. And that's same store sales. I mean, AUV grew. It's like, I'm just proud. I'm very happy for Tracy and the brand as a whole for her leadership. And Allison's lead. I mean, we have a great executive team and just great staff too.
Right. So when the Women's Franchise Committee task force, who puts together the annual leadership conference, reached out to you, both of you raised your hand equally. Did you two chat about it? I don't know who wants to take this.
Did you get
answer.
Did you get the email, or did we both get the email and you said, do we want to do this? Do you remember?
We might have both received it. Similar to what you said at the beginning, Dawn, I was not familiar with the case study. I had never attended the pre-conference session. So I think in that case, I deferred to Shannon. And so Shannon, do you want to share what your feedback was?
So I have been involved in the annual leadership conference for years. I remember when Mary Thompson spoke, and she spoke on leadership, and I have a picture on my phone of, something that she shared. Like it was amazing. And just watching people get the Crystal Compass Award, like I mean, that it's an amazing event. So if you haven't been to the annual leadership conference, you should absolutely go. But Tracy had not been attending IFA until she needed to. And so I had led roundtables many times during the annual leadership conference. So I knew what the case study was. And what I remembered in my brain of the case study is, this is a brand that, screwed up, for lack of a better term, something. And,
Right.
And now everyone's going to scrutinize it and be like, this is how we would have done it. Cause it's so much easier coaching from the sidelines. I have found in my coaching business, it's like you can come in and you have this overarching look and you're like, oh, well, why didn't they do this? That was stupid of them. And but when you're in the midst of something, sometimes it doesn't feel as easy and it's more complicated. So I knew in the past, like, do we want to be known as the case study brand? And then when Robin said, we really want to focus on the transaction and why, see if people will pick, if you sold to private equity, did you sell to a platform company? Did you sell to your competitor? Or did you sell to a franchisee? And I'm like, okay. And first off, I'm a proud person, but I'm not too proud to use my own life to have other people learn. And having been in this space for 20 years, I know the people who went before me, they allowed themselves to be put in a position so other people could learn. Hopefully, they don't do the same thing. And I have a friend who says, we want to learn from the mistakes of others. We don't want to be the others. And so I knew by saying yes to this, that we would put ourselves in a position to show some of our scars, show some of our flaws, show some things that we did not do well. We also shared some things that we did really well, and let people learn from us. And I think I was had some trepidation going into the decision, but once the decision was made, I think Tracy and I were very excited about it.
Yeah. So you said that the people in the room are really scrutinizing, and they are. And one of the things as a participant in the case study itself, you can look at the brand with clarity and simplification. There's only 6 to 8 pages of content that is provided to the attendees, and they could be men or women. The Women's Franchise Committee doesn't just say, hey, only women can attend this annual leadership conference.
Right.
So it is a very cross-functional room of people who are in all stages of their role in franchising. Some are brand new. This is the first thing that they have ever attended within the IFA, if they're attending the conference for the first time, the convention for the first time. And so it is the first day. So they haven't even been immersed in, the 3,500 or 4,000 people that will be at convention. This is between 300 and 350. Maybe I think we had almost 400 one year. But we do try and keep it small so that it can be interactive and immersive, and 8 to 10 people sit at a table. So I think to your point, you can drop into this, read the case study, and then judge. And so I would definitely have had doubts. I think if it were, me saying, I don't have a brand to do it, but I could see where you would have doubts, but also so happy that you did open up and say, we're happy to participate.
I told people, I said, it feels like you're lifting the skirt and like, this is what it is. This is what you get, and
yeah.
I think I'm happy that it went so well and that people were able to learn and hopefully grow their business acumen and franchise education.
Right. So the three of us were outside of the room when all of the deliberation was happening in Phoenix. And so this year they did the case study a little bit differently. They kind of paused in between and they made the group vote. And so they basically had narrowed it down to, okay, it's not private equity, it's not a platform brand, it's not a competitor, it's a franchisee. And so then, Tracy, why don't you share what you found out when we came back into the room?
I think the overwhelming response when we came back into the room was that it was not a franchisee. And in fact, if it was a franchisee, it was a man, and they referred to him as a guy. And there was a lot of questions about his motivation. It's like, well, what if all the marketing people at the table were like, he's going to get rid of the marketing brand fund, or he's going to do things to make the company more profitable. And so I think that was, I think as a percentage, it was like 8% said that it was a franchisee. So it was very, very low, not even on the radar. So most people, the consensus was that it was private equity or bringing in a management partner. I think that was the other one that was a close second. So when we came into the room, everyone was like, oh, like
They're wearing pink.
Yeah, exactly. It was quite surprising. And there were people in that room. Shannon knows a lot more people in that room than I did, but that were actually very surprised when we came walking out. And so that was kind of neat, because I think, one of the things I strive to do when making decisions is we're often like, is it A or is it B? And so what I hope this was able to illustrate is that sometimes there's a third option. And so this third option, while it might not have been right for anybody else in that room except for us, it worked for us. And so we were able to share the good, the bad. And I don't think there was really anything ugly about this situation. So we were just able to present that, it might not be as limited as what you think, that it doesn't have to be A or B, but there could be another option when the founders in the room go to sell your business. Or if there was a franchisee at one of those tables who thought, well, that's ridiculous. Maybe they were able to say like, well, maybe not, maybe there is an opportunity for me to raise my hand someday.
Right. Yeah, I think that it also, so why don't Shannon, you share, because the first group of franchisees, first 150, joined the brand under your original leadership. How many women, how many men are in your brand?
Oh man, I think it's like 98% women. We don't
Right.
have a lot of men. I think this business just lends itself very well to women. And we've been in the past, we've been a part-time supplemental income type of business. Now, lots of people make a very good living doing Just Between Friends, but Tracy has come in and is we've known we needed to change the avatar for quite some time, but it's actually happening. And so we say part-time effort equals part-time results, and full-time effort equals full-time results. And so the changing of the avatar under Tracy's leadership is going to be, we're looking for full-time people. So I don't know if that answered your question, but the business is going to grow. And if we can have people within the Just Between Friends that want that growth, want that scalability for their community, because, that's what it is. It's a community event. And the larger it is, the more people it helps. And for us to get to that household name, that's what we're trying to do.
Right. So Tracy, do you have any thoughts on the demographics or of the approach, maybe more of a full-time focus? It's very affordable. The original investment to open a Just Between Friends is under 100,000. It's far under 100,000, right?
Yes.
So maybe you can expand a little bit about that with the growth plan for our listeners.
Yeah, so I think women are naturally inclined to our brand because they're meeting the needs of their kids. Not that men aren't either. My husband is now the franchisee, so I've seen both sides of it on a daily basis. But our avatar is really someone who has left a corporate job. Perhaps they were an accountant or a teacher or just stepped out of the workforce to raise their children, yet still feel they have a lot that they can contribute, not only to their family from a supplemental or a full-time income perspective, but also in terms of their talent. We've got lots of really talented women and a few men who are able to have the flexibility that they want to serve their family well and also serve their community well. And so I think as we start refining our messaging, that although nobody likes to be told success is possible for everyone, you can have it all, I think it does require balance. And we all know that can be challenging, especially for families that have young children, but it's possible. And franchising is really a great tool for that because you're able to lean into the resources that will help propel your success. So as we look towards our growth plan, it's really being dialed in on what is our avatar, somebody who has that corporate experience, who has business acumen, and who does want more than a hobby, because this is a very grueling job. I mean, because it's very physical for the week of the sale. And it's a lot of work. And so it's important to know that there's a payoff at the end of all of that work. And so as we're looking to the future, it's balancing that message of it is a lot of work, but there's also a lot of reward, not only just the intrinsic reward, but also a financial reward as well.
Yeah, and I wonder if any of your Cookies by Design schedule maybe had prepared you a little bit about that. There's a little bit of a lull in the business, right? It's steady, but then there are times of the year, the business that I was in, same thing, right? You hit those holidays or you hit those times of the year when the business goes from 0 to 100 and you have to be ready for it. So
Definitely.
a lot of this I can relate to. So ladies, it's been wonderful. I want to give you both an opportunity to share one more piece of advice for our listeners about either somebody in your past who inspired you to be the person you are today, or a piece of advice for women and men who are entering franchising or are currently in franchising and looking to take the next level. So you can choose which one you'd like. And Shannon, I'd like you to go first.
Yeah, sure. So this piece of advice I feel like I've given for 20 years because it's honestly how I grew, is to surround yourself with smart people. And franchising is just like Tracy said, like if you're gonna become a franchisee, like find the person who is doing the best job in that brand and shadow them. Likewise, if you're going to be a franchisor, find some people who have already sat in the seat you want to sit in, or know the industry, and sit at their feet and become a student of what they have done. I will tell you, I had my co-founder and I had gone through a reorganization. So I had sold my shares of the original mothership Just Between Friends to Devin in 2011. And so that was really the only transaction that I had been a part of. So I did not have although I had sat in the rooms where people talked on roundtables. I had gone to a conference on exit planning. I had studied a lot on exit planning. I had never physically been through this type of a transaction. And I knew, oh gosh, I need to hire an investment banker. I need to, hire this high dollar M&A attorney. I need to, do all of these things. Well, thankfully, because I had positioned myself at the feet of so many people who had already done that, like people like Jay Duke, who, is with BDO, not just with, but he's leading BDO, and Mary Thompson, who is the COO of Neighborly, and Josh Wall, who is with Unleashed Brands and has been with Christian Brothers in the past, and they're a platform company, and John Francis, who has helped with multiple transactions. It's like I had all of these people who had already been through this multiple times that I could sit at the feet of, and I didn't have to pay an investment banker. I didn't have to do some of the things that you would typically do because I had their expertise, and I didn't have to make, I think, as many mistakes as probably I would have had I not had their expertise and advice. So that's what I would do. Surround yourself with smart people.
Thank you very much. Great advice. Tracy, what are your thoughts?
Yes, Shannon just named our entire advisory board. And so now I have the gift of going second and being the beneficiary of all of those really smart people on our advisory board. Yeah, so I would say I agree with that. And also be a learner, is not, there's always something to learn, and trying to learn something every single day. And I think that is what has enabled me to have any level of success in any business that I've been in. And everything that I've ever done, as I look at my pattern of whether it was owning a cookie store or owning a consignment business or now being in this role of franchisor, I had never done the thing before I actually did the thing. And so it's having the confidence in yourself to jump when you're not really sure what you're jumping into, or not really sure, what you're doing, having that courage. And I think surrounding yourself with smart people gives us the courage, because you know that if you jump into something that you're unfamiliar with, there's probably somebody out there who has done it before and who's willing to help, which does require a high degree of humility to ask for that help. So I would say that is probably been fundamental for me, is just being a learner. And then also back to what we talked about earlier, is just having the courage to raise your hand, because at one point during the whole negotiation process, Shannon and I came to a stalemate. And so we decided that we were going to, end our conversations. And so I was like, oh, I felt like such a failure. And my husband was like, nobody knows, because it was an NDA that was in place. And so the only person that knew that things didn't materialize was me. But in my eyes, I was like, we didn't set out to what we were trying to accomplish. And so part of that was just having that courage to raise your hand again. If at first you don't succeed, you need to try again. And so many entrepreneurs, you talk about like just how many times they failed, because the focus is always on the prize and what people have won in their desired profession, but nobody really sees all the things that happen behind the scenes in order to make that happen. And so I would just say, keep trying. And if you have the conviction and the drive, and you're surrounded by people that have done that before, and you're willing to learn, that's really setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely clapping for that. So I love the brands who all of a sudden people start talking about, and then you really do go back and you start to investigate. And yes, it's been a 20-year journey of success,
Exactly.
right? Because nobody hears when they failed and picked themselves up and started again, and then kept moving forward. So Tracy, Shannon, thank you so much for both of your insights today and for sharing more with us than even you shared with the case study. I wanted to let our listeners know a little bit more about how they can get involved and how they can lean on the resources that everyone at the IFA has at their disposal. Anybody who is part of the IFA as a member can lean on the IFA for those tools. So the WFN, the Women's Franchise Network chapters, Tracy and I are fortunate to be in the Philadelphia chapter. I'm the co-chair of the Philadelphia chapter, and she spoke on our panel recapping the IFA just recently. And those WFN chapters are listed on the website, franchise.org, under the About Us section on the Women in Franchising page under Forums and Committees. So everybody who is listening can look there. They can also find prior podcasts, including podcast where Shannon was interviewed by Michelle Rowan, former chair of the Women's Franchise Committee. And so thank you both for your time today. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you so much for having us, Dawn.
You're very welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day.